Is that a breakup?
I think we have a situation right here.
On the Feeling Station.
Welcome to The Feeling Station, a podcast that touches on breakup stories that people would like to talk about with a view to give lessons that they learned from their experiences. We hope you find the stories entertaining, but more importantly, meaningful, given the lesson behind everything we're going to talk about today. Now, with me in the studio is a lady I've been trying to get hold of for a very long time.
Really?
This is exactly what I mean. You don't even realize I've been trying to get a hold of you for such a long time. Am I that invisible to you now?
What signs? Like how? What? Excuse me. I've not seen this. You need to put more effort. Like honestly.
Okay, well, the effort that a guy puts in is never really as visible now, is it?
No, because women see things very differently.
In the same way that women see man flu differently.
Oh,
right? Yeah, exactly. It's
that's
the
another discussion.
Same thing.
That's another discussion.
Well, thank you for taking time to come out.
My pleasure.
We're going to be talking about breakup story, obviously, today. And in the spirit of the podcast, it's important for me to keep your name anonymous. So I have a couple of names here, and I'm going to pick one. Mm-hmm. Whatever name I pick is going to be your name for the episode, right? Now,
yep.
God help me to remember that constantly. I may struggle, but I will do my best.
God help us
and
all.
Then equally, you have a name that you need to pick out from that pile of names over there.
Yeah.
And whatever name you pick out is going to be the name of the guy that you were with.
Lovely.
Now, I always make this assumption. I need to stop. I'm assuming that you were with a male. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was.
Awesome.
Yes.
So all of those are male names.
Lovely.
All right. So I'll go first, right? Pick up the name for you. Right, your name is Sophia.
Sophia.
Yeah,
That's
Sophia.
a lovely name.
Yeah, and that means pure, and that's an East African name.
Sophia.
Yeah,
love
Sophia.
it.
Safya.
Safya.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Your turn. What's the
Lovely.
name of the guy that you were with?
Right. It is Suma.
Suma.
Yeah, that means ask in Tanzania.
Oh, what, Suma?
Yeah.
Very
Suma.
interesting.
Yeah.
And now in the past, there's some names that you pick out, and whatever the meaning is was kind of relatable to the situation. Does the meaning mean anything in the story you're about to tell? Does it have any significance?
Well, naturally, I'm not good at asking for help, so like, I'm like trying to take the world on my own.
Wow. Okay.
And
cool.
that filters through to all my relationships,
Oh, does it?
friendships, romantic relationships. So I'm trying to improve on asking for help.
So that is actually very relevant. I'm starting to feel like a bit of a what do you call it? The fortune teller.
Oh, absolutely. There's no coincidence in life. Like there's a book that I read, actually. There's no such thing as a coincidence.
Awesome. Now, what's really important with these podcasts, one is to give a lesson that the people who are listening to this should pick up from your breakup story.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say you have learned or you would like people to learn from your breakup?
How many lessons are we talking about?
Wow. Go for it. Right? Go for the break a leg.
Okay. Well, I guess if we start with the ask, asking for help, because like people want to feel like they're needed. Like they want to feel, I think especially guys, they want to feel like, they're like your hero, they're like helping you out. But whereas I'm quite independent, I think people sometimes, not just like guys, but friends can feel a bit like, oh, they don't really, I've got it all figured out. So they don't really they're not needed in my life. Whereas that's quite the opposite. And I guess that links to communication, because it's all about how you communicate. And I'm not very good at communicating. Sometimes I avoid difficult conversations, but you need those conversations, because if people don't know how I feel and I don't know how they feel, then we're not aligned and we're not on the same trajectory.
Yeah.
And that's how you kind of move apart, I suppose. Because sometimes you have the same frustrations and it's just because of lack of communications, which pushes you like further apart.
Yeah.
And then the other lesson, it's just making my voice heard in a relationship. Like, I was talking to about this with my girlfriends, and women have a tendency, like some women anyway, I shouldn't generalize. But anyway, amongst my friends, we've just discussed that this kind of thing that we do where we end up just almost just going along with the relationship and what the guy wants, and it almost feels like the relationship is on the guy's terms, and I'm not really making my voice heard. And over time, that just turns into a massive frustration. And then I just start to like disengage, because I just feel like, I'm not really, well, inevitably the relationship's not going to fulfill what I want from it because the guy doesn't know. And I'm just going with what they say.
Yeah.
And over time, in any kind of circumstance, if you just feel like you're almost like compromising a lot, you start to resent that person for it. So then
True.
it just doesn't work out. So like that's another lesson. The other lesson.
Wow.
I know.
This is great.
It's crazy.
No, this is great. Go for it.
Is like before I used to think it's not that important to have like many things in common with a partner and you can like find new hobbies together.
Yeah.
But actually like it can be challenging if you don't have things in common. Like you almost, it is important to have that kind of common foundation, like common ground. Because I suppose a romantic relationship is no different to a normal friendship where normally like, you know, I'm not saying you go to people with similar attributes to you. Like you know, I've got friends who range from all different age groups, but across those friends, there's something that we have in common. And I felt with my ex, we probably just didn't have enough in common. And as much as we tried to find like new hobbies together, I don't know, it was slightly challenging. And I just feel like in my other relationships where I've had things in common with the counterpart, it was slightly easier. Yeah. It just probably was like relationships are hard work anyway. That part just made it harder.
Even harder,
Yeah. And then, you know, relationships, you need to constantly work on the relationship.
Yeah.
Like they say it's easier to enter a relationship than maintain a relationship.
True.
And that is so important. It's like, you know, not just the communication thing, but making sure that your visions are both aligned, that you're both listening to each other, and that you value each other, like even just like the intimacy, just understanding how your partner wants to be loved and making sure they understand how you want to be loved. Because like in a relationship, like you could be together for a year, but there's so many like different emotions throughout that year and there's so many different responses that you want throughout that year. Because like with friends, it's slightly different because, you know, if you're feeling a bit rubbish, you go to this friend because they like pick you up when you're in that kind of situation. If you're feeling a certain way, you go to another friend and they almost like kind of pick you up. And, you know, it's just important to communicate that to your partner so they understand those different sides to you. And then this is crazy.
Look, this is fantastic. The only challenge for me now is I'm normally quite good at remembering these lessons because they are right at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
Now I don't even know what number we're on. Is this number 4?
Possibly 4 or 5.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah. And then the other lesson is that like I think it's important to date somebody who has their own life. Like what I mean is like they know who they are, they have their own hobbies, they have their own social life, and they're not just relying on you as like their main person in life. I don't know if I'm articulating that well.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that is crucial. Like it's important.
Because it's not like that, they end up having a huge dependency on you, and then you feel that pressure to always try and.
Oh my god.
Yeah, okay.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so that's the other lesson. And I think, you know what, I'll leave it there. I think those are my key takeaways from the relationship. Yeah, that I actually need to put myself first more and say what I want. Like, you know, I always say this with like my therapist. I'm quite good at, like at work, I'm very good at saying what I want and, you know, what I can and can't do. But in relationships, I'm probably just not as assertive.
It just goes
and it's because
upside down.
It's because like you're risking becoming vulnerable. And at work, you know, you're not worried about that. It's just like a professional persona.
Vulnerable is okay, no?
What, at work? No,
Anyway.
in my life. No, I mean, it depends what field of work you're in. I mean, I work with mostly men. I don't think they would understand that. But like in relationships, no, I find it hard because, you know, in our African culture, like vulnerability is not encouraged. You know, it's supposed to like man up and toughen through. So to try and undo all of that in one go is slightly challenging.
Would you say that that's one of the lessons that you picked up from the relationship, that being vulnerable is okay?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You didn't quite mention that though.
No.
Why?
I suppose it was part of the communication.
Gotcha.
Yeah. For me, it's part of that communication. Because then through that, you kind of communicate how you're feeling and then people understand that, oh, actually, you might seem like you have it together, but really, you're just...
I really want to hear what happened. Because of this background you've given, it roped me in so much.
Yeah.
Tell me where your love story begins. Where did you meet with your man?
Well, algorithm, you know, it was online.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Okay.
So online chose it for me,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, you know. And yeah, we met online.
Mm-hmm.
One of these many dating applications where you swipe left or right.
Okay.
I swiped right.
Oh, yeah.
So did he. So
Okay.
it was fantastic
Yeah.
because like with me with online dating,
Mm-hmm.
I know most people like to have a whole chit chat and then meet the person. I haven't got time for that.
So you went straight to the point. You're like, do you want me or you don't?
No, so like he
What did you do? How did it go?
I'm like, so we messaged.
Yeah, who was the
and-
first to message the other? Because
Oh, this will okay. I'll give away my app. It was Bumble, and the girl messages the guy first.
oh right, okay,
Yeah,
right, gotcha.
like the guys can't message the girls.
Okay,
The girl
okay.
has 24 hours to message the
Yeah,
guy.
and
So
what
I
was your first
messaged
line
him. So, oh man. So, if I say it. So anyway, he used to work for a company with their Rogue TV ad. When I say Rogue, it's like bloody annoying. It's been voted one of the worst television ads. So then he had it that he worked
Yeah.
there, and I was like, I hope you're not in the marketing
Yeah,
department.
yeah.
And then he wrote back.
Nice.
And then he said, do you want to meet for a coffee? And I was like, fantastic.
Good.
And then we didn't speak for a few days. And then we just met, you know, he messaged me like the day before, like, you know, this is where we're going. Fantastic. And we met. And so like our first date was really nice. Like I met him and I was like, oh, okay. Like it's weird when you meet online because, you know, that's your first time meeting that person. So it's
Yeah.
not going to be like everything's real. It's like there's nerves, there's everything.
Yeah.
But, you know, we had a great first date. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then it went on from there.
So first date happens, and from that first date you feel, look, I want to see this guy again, and he feels the same. I want to see this girl again. Yeah.
I was like, okay, he's nice, but like, you know, I'll go on another date and then make up my mind. I think with online dating, unless they're awful, like bloody awful, you just kind of have to see how it goes, like
Yeah.
3 or 4 dates in to really like work it out.
So it wasn't one of those where from the first date you knew, oh yeah, I'm gonna hit it off with this guy.
No.
No?
I think that happens when you meet people in real life. With online, I wouldn't say it's so much like that.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, he's cool, he's a nice guy. But equally, like, I'm trying to kind of not just stick to a type. So I tried to be open-minded. So I was like, okay, like we've got good conversation and he's cool and easy to hang out with. So like, let's go on another date and then I'll make my mind up.
So the other date happens.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, great. Like, I actually really like him. He's a cool guy.
Good. What is it that you liked about him then?
He was very easygoing. He's very calm. Like, obviously, we're in London. And, like, guys can have, like, almost, they feel like they have to be, like, this macho kind of laddie sometimes, or, I don't know, show off, or whatever. But he just seemed really, like, content with himself and
Yeah.
just, like, you know, like, wants to enjoy life. So...
And that was attractive to you. obviously.
Yeah. And he's lived in different countries, so he's like cultured and like, So I thought
It sounds like you was ticking a lot of the right boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you didn't have any boxes, I don't get the feeling that you had reservations at that point.
No. I was like, oh, you know what? Like, he seems really cool. Like, he seemed fun. He made me
Yeah.
laugh. He
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
take himself too seriously, which is exactly what I'm about. Like, and I like to be spontaneous. Like, I'm really spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I know this is a bit left field, but like, you know, I remember on our first date, I mentioned that, oh, like, you know, I've never been to this country in Europe. And then he was like, well, why don't we go there on our second date?
Oh. Nice.
Yeah, and like, you know, were it not for my friends who are like, what the F, you want to go to a foreign country with a guy you've never met? I was like, okay. When you put it like that, it
Yeah,
sounds weird. But like
gotcha.
for me, that's like normal. So like we kind of postponed and then, you know, like 4 weeks later we did.
Yeah. Okay. When you are now more confident that, okay, this guy is.
Yeah, my friends are like, why don't you spend like a weekend together, suss it out, make sure he's not a psycho, and then go abroad. And like, just make sure you're like, you know, you've seen his ID and whatever else.
You went abroad?
And we did go abroad,
Okay.
yeah.
So that means he wasn't psycho.
No. So it was
Good.
normal. Like he passed the check. Like
So your relationship grew, I'm guessing, over time?
Like I mean,
Organically?
organically at a fast, accelerated rate, more than I would. I like to kind of take things slow, but he was quite full on. He was quite full on. And at first I was like, bloody hell, like this guy's really full on. But then I didn't know whether that's because of like my underlying kind of commitment issues or whatever, you know. I just didn't know. And I remember like when he was like, I think he was out and I spoke to one of his colleagues on the phone. He was like, oh, so you're like his girlfriend? And I was like, fuck, like I'm his girlfriend. And I remember putting the phone down, calling my friend in a panic. And I was like, oh my God, I think I have a boyfriend.
Oh my God. You see, now this, I have this with nearly every person I speak to. Back in the day, right? I'm talking way back in the 90s.
Yeah.
If I liked a girl, I would write a little note and say, look, I like you. I want you to be my girlfriend.
Exactly.
One of my boys sends that over and then she'll be like, oh, think about it for God knows how long.
Absolutely.
And then the confirmation comes. Yeah, yes, you are my girlfriend. I mean, you're my boyfriend. It doesn't seem to be the same.
No, I don't know why. And I don't like that. I just feel like these assumptions.
So you ended up being a girlfriend without you even knowing?
I didn't even know. Yeah, I mean, I like to say I didn't have a choice, but I suppose I did.
Oh,
but yeah, I remember saying to my friend, like, well, I feel like I have a boyfriend, but he didn't even ask me if I wanted to be his girlfriend. So like, do I have to act like his girlfriend? Do I have to stop seeing other people? Like, what do I do now? And she was just like, well, like...
just be the girlfriend.
Yeah. She was like, what is your problem? Do you like the guy? I was like, yeah, but like he needs to ask me.
So he never did?
He never did. So I was like, okay, like I'm his girlfriend now. Okay, fine. So then it just kind of went on that was it. I was his girlfriend.
Nice. When did you start feeling like something wasn't right?
I would probably say it was probably like 3 months in.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 months out of, what was your total span for the relationship?
It was a whole 12 months.
12, so a whole
year. Yeah.
So a quarter in, you started feeling,
Yeah.
What was the first thing that made you feel that way?
Like, I had other personal problems going on. Like, I had, really close family member who was unwell. And, like, I wasn't working, like, locally at the time. So I had to be, like, away for work during the week and then back on the weekends. And obviously, like, I want to spend time with my friends. I want to spend time with my family. And then, obviously, I'm getting a boyfriend. Retrospectively, maybe it wasn't the best time to, like, enter a relationship. But, like, I just didn't feel like he understood that there were all these other things in my life that I was trying to juggle. It was just, like, I have to dedicate all my time to him. And it was like, dude, I've only known you for 3 months. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe I see things differently and that's incorrect. But I just thought, like, if I see you, like, if we go out for a meal or dinner, like, on a weekend or when I'm back, that's fine. To me, that's fine.
What was he after? I mean, because he knew that you were working out of town. Did he want you to be with him the Friday that you land right up until the Sunday when you have to go?
I think, yeah, he would have wanted me to be like with him, like at least spend like a whole Saturday together. But I couldn't. I just didn't have the capacity. Because then he would be like, oh, but you're like spending your time with like friends and you're not, I just feel like a side project. And I wasn't prioritizing him enough. And perhaps that's true. I feel like maybe sometimes when I enter in a relationship, I'm very dedicated to my friends. I'm probably like, when girls are like, oh, he just wants to hang out with his mates. Maybe I can be a bit like that. And maybe I struggle to find a balance. So perhaps there was some truth to it. And yeah, so initially that was kind of like, okay, like there's a bit demanding. Like it's a bit,
I mean, but you've always known as demanding because one of the first things you said here was that he was full on.
Yeah.
So this guy didn't hide the fact that he was full on from day one.
True, but I feel this is it. I have to put it into context. The last person I was with prior to him was like very into their work, so they didn't really have much time to be like together. And the one thing I wanted in my next relationship was somebody who has the time for me.
Boom, and there it is. But
I know, and I was like, well, you can't have it both ways, But I think I was just getting extremes of both. There was no in between. So then I just felt like, well, look, you can't be moaning, like maybe just kind of see how it goes. And then like he would never really ask, like bearing in mind he knew like someone close to me was not well. He wouldn't really ask me like, how they are or anything like that. So I did pull him up on it to be like, oh, you don't really ask me how they are, like how I am and stuff like that. So those were kind of my initial kind of like
Did he ever explain why he was like that?
He'd be like, oh, I didn't ask you. And I'm like, no, you didn't, because obviously I wouldn't ask you. And he would be like, okay, like I'll ask you more and stuff. Or like, it's a cultural thing perhaps because he's not from like, he's not English or whatever. I mean, I'm not either, but whatever. So yeah.
Did he, is he an only child? Does he come from a very... Oh, okay.
Yeah. So part of it, I did try to attribute it to maybe he's an only child, but like, that's BS. Like, I've got friends who are only childs and like they're caring. It's a choice. You know, you can't keep blaming that, you know? Yeah, it's a choice.
Yeah. I mean, it is a choice, but I think exposure to other people might have, you know, a contributing factor.
I think it was a massive contributor to his lack of understanding of like either like if I tried to talk to him, I mean, I know we're going to move on to it soon, but like if I tried to express my feelings or like how I'm feeling about a certain situation, he just couldn't comprehend. Like we just could have a normal like talk about it, you know. With most people, like in my previous relationships, when I've been going through shit, I'll go to my partner and like we'll have a talk about it, and then you just feel better. Like you just feel so much better. Like they haven't done anything, but like they just make you feel better. And he failed to do that, and that's because like he didn't have really many friends, not really close to his family. So I think that's it. He can't relate because he's never had to relate to anybody. Like he just doesn't. So, you know, it's just one of those things.
So now this feels like this is issue number 2 cracking in. The very first one was that you just felt he was so full on and didn't understand why you couldn't, be with him when he needed you to be with him.
Yeah.
And then now there's a second issue that you're talking about where you felt that the things that mattered to you, the people that mattered to you, he seemed to pay very little attention to.
I guess with everything, you kind of need to give people a chance. And I know I can be guilty of like, you know, almost like one strike you're out. Like my personality type is, even my friendships, I look for perfectionism, and like once I start to think I can't trust you not trust you as a friend, but you're not reliable, I don't like that aspect of you, like I write you off.
You're out.
And and like no one's perfect, so I'm trying to get out of that. So I did think, oh, you know what, like there are some positive attributes to him. I know I'm just focusing on the negatives here. God, I haven't said anything positive about him since we started.
We're getting there.
We're talking about breakups, so naturally that is to happen. But like he was genuinely like a nice guy as well. So like I was like, okay, let's try and put things into perspective here. Like it's not all bad. Just, you know, some of these things people can work on with feedback and whatever. So let's kind of see how it goes.
So did you give that feedback?
I did tell him. I mean, I was honest, like, you know, that I would like him to like ask me about how I am a bit more and, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
What else started building up on top of that?
So like, I mean, we went on a trip.
Yeah.
Like a weekend city break.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like it was really nice because then we got to like have a good conversation.
Yeah.
And, you know, from his perspective, he was like, you know, I need to kind of speak more about my feelings and emotions. Why am I not asking about, you know, where is this going? He just wants me to kind of be almost, you know, like, you know, in his words, like a bit more like woman-like in the relationship about that kind of stuff.
Admittedly, were you not being that person?
Sorry?
But were you holding back?
I'm just not like that. Like,
okay.
So then, you know, and he just explained to me that for him in a relationship, he really wants like to be somewhere where he feels like he belongs and like, you know, almost like then he wants to feel like I'm really important to him and, you know, we belong to each other, that kind of stuff, you know, where you feel like you're part of someone. And
some of that happens by you speaking about some things that are bothering you.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, I take that on board. And I was like, okay, like, you know, after the trip, like things did get better. So, you know, so it was like, okay, like we're moving on like a better trajectory. Like this is good. Like we've been open with each other. And then I had, you know, so this is now like 4 or 5 months in of like things improving. We're spending more time together. Well, like, you know, when I can. And then things took a turn, not in the relationship, but my personal life. I had like a, you know, life-turning event. Like, you know, one of my parents passed away. So that was like really like a really bad time. And, you know, he was the most supportive person I could ever have asked for. Like he was great. You know, given that this happened pretty much early on into the relationship, you know, some people would not like stick around because they'll be thinking, oh, this is probably like too much baggage. Yeah. But like, you know, he was there for me like a lot. So that was me seeing another side to him where I thought, you know what, like he might not be able to talk about like emotions or whatever, but when it comes to like, you know, looking after me and that kind of stuff, then, you know, like he is doing the best he can. So that was nice. And then I would say like, you know, 2 months on, like obviously, you know, if you're in a relationship with someone who's going through bereavement, it is shit. Like, there's just no other way to put it. Like, they are going through something that can't be put into words. And, you know, the thing is, like, you go into a relationship looking for love. They can't give you that love. Like,
because someone they really loved is not with them anymore.
Exactly. Their head is not in that space. And, you know, this is what I've noticed. Like, you know, people, like the first month, okay, people understand bereavement because they can see it. Like, you know, you're crying, blah, blah, blah. And then month 2, obviously, you're not crying every single day. You're like, you know, trying to not move on, but like get yourself back together, like the routine of work, the routine of whatever, like carry on with the routine. Then because you're like trying to carry on with the routine, almost like sometimes people think like, oh, like you're okay now, like this is fine. And it's like, well, no, life dictates that you have to kind of carry on. It's not going to wait for you. Like, you have a job that needs to be done. You know, you kind of need to sort out life admin and that kind of stuff. So then like 2-3 months in, I could tell like he just, like, to be honest, my head was just not there because I was just trying to figure out like, okay, like what happens to my life now? Like, all of this has happened, all of this has changed. And I just went back to that thing again where like, you know, he wouldn't really ask like how I'm feeling. And that started to really bother me. Like, I can't stand people who don't ask me how I'm feeling. Like, it really irritates me. And that's probably me projecting because of, you know, maybe previous relationships, not just romantic relationships, just like relationships in general. I hate people who don't ask me how I am because I just feel like that means you don't care about me. And it doesn't matter how much like practical stuff you're doing for me. If you're not asking me how I am, then like why bother? So that kind of started to creep in, and that started to make things a bit challenging. So then I think he just felt like he was being neglected and he wasn't really enjoying the relationship, which, you know, is true. It's, you know, it's a fact that like it was a bit shit, but we still kind of just, he tried to break up with me and I was like, look, you know,
He tried breaking up with you over what?
He was just like, you know, this is now like how many months in? Probably like 7-8 months in. He's like, you know, like he's not enjoying the relationship. Like, you know, there's just not much to it or whatever because of everything I was going through, to be honest. And I was like, look, I completely understand like how you feel. Like, I know I'm not the best person to be around. But like, if you like give me like another month or 2, like I will start to get better. Yeah, because naturally, like sometimes after that length of period of time, you do start to come back to your shell and whatever. And, you know, things did start to get better. So like, you know, I was like, okay, like maybe it's not so bad. And we kind of tried to carry on.
Did it go very well? I mean, at that point when you said you tried carrying on, because it feels like you had underlying issues that you were kind of suppressing, at least just so that the relationship could move forward. But these underlying issues sometimes have a tendency to just come out of nowhere and just throw you off completely.
Yeah.
So was this your coping mechanism, just to try and get over your grief?
I think it was. It was because it was a good distraction. I mean, I should add in there that, like, you know, we were pretty much with each other like 6 or 7 days a week. Like, we were together all the time. Okay,
so somewhere along the lines you moved closer to where he was. Is that right?
So yeah, I ended up moving back. Yeah,
okay,
and
good.
like we lived like, you know, 3 miles from each other.
So at least for him that was a good thing now, because he wanted that.
Oh man, he was happy. Yeah, because like we were together every day. Like I say, like we'd be together every day. And were you okay
with that? Because remember you said you still had your friends that you were interested in.
Like, yeah, like I was finding a balance, because then it was easier, because then it was like, if I'm around when we're together locally, I can meet my friends sometimes during the day, and then we can spend the evening together and, you know, whatever. So that kind of did become somewhat easier. Yeah, that definitely like made a difference. And then, oh God, it's just so much. So that made a difference, definitely. But like certain things where I just thought, like, could I see myself spending the rest of my life with this guy? Like, I am not sure. You know,
what were those things that made you feel that way?
Like, if I just want to have like a meaningful conversation, it was challenging. So for example, I'd been thinking, okay, like I'd like to buy somewhere, like which area should I buy? Like, yeah, it's a big life decision. Like, where am I going to buy? Like, where is it? So then I said to him, oh, you know, like, this is what I'm thinking of doing, you know, like, from your perspective, what would be like the best course of action. And I had like 2 or 3 different strategies about this whole purchase. It wasn't just like buy somewhere, it was just, there was a strategy to it. So then I was like, trying to talk to him about, like, which strategy do you think would you advise me to take, like, if you were in my shoes? And then it just all became about him. Oh, like, you're so lucky you're in this position where you can buy somewhere.
No.
And then, I'm just like, fuck off.
No.
Stop making this about you. Like, this is about me right now. So then after that, I was just like, okay, so you haven't
that
actually...
input never came in. You never got that input.
No. Like, after I had to, like, pretty much just, like, be like, okay, like, I get it, but, like, what would you advise? You know, I had to kind of, like, be forceful about it. And then other things where it would be like, I've got lots of... well, not lots, but like I have different ideas of like things that I want to do, like either as a side gig or whatever else. And then, you want to run through things with your partner. They're like your first port of call, like, and then I'd be like, oh, I've thought of this, like, what do you think? And then like, I always come with like ABC, just so that, things like there's a comparison or whatever. And he's like, oh, like, you're so lucky you're thinking of ideas. I wish I could think of ideas and stuff like that. And it's just like again, you're just making this about you. So that started to just like, okay, you're not genuinely one of those people who could be happy for me. And like, I remember one time specifically, so we had said like, I love traveling. And I'd said, okay, like, I would love to go to Greece. So can our next holiday be in Greece? Like, and he was like, yeah, like he would want to go to Greece. And I'd said, about, flight price or whatever. Anyway, he came round and he's like, oh, like, he feels like the flights are too expensive, so he can't go. And I was like, okay, like, whatever. And then just, out of nowhere, one of my girlfriends rang me and she's like, oh, like, we're going to Greece in like 2 weeks. Do you want to come? Like, everything's paid for. You just have to pay for your flights.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So I go to him and I was like, oh, you never guess what? Like, I'm actually going. And he's like, oh, I wish I had friends who could invite me for a trip and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, God, you're not even like happy for me. So that started to just, that wasn't great. So I just thought, like, you're not really happy for me. We can't really have a meaningful conversation. The 2 things that really, really matter to me. Like, I can't have people around me who can't be happy for me. And that I can't really have meaningful conversations with because that's what I like. So then, it just, from then on, I think, there was just doubt.
But were you doubting?
The longevity of it. Like, it's fine now, but like, 25 years on, like even 25 years on, could I really put up with somebody who can't be happy for me? Probably not,
So did you ever tell him that, look, I feel like you're not happy for me?
No.
Okay. so how is he meant to improve on something that he clearly doesn't see is a problem? And I guess this ties into one of the lessons that you spoke about initially, to say, look, communicate stuff. Because if you had communicated that to him, he would have known that this is how you feel.
Yeah.
In the same way he let you know how he felt when he said, look, I don't feel like you are being feminine and womanly.
Yeah.
You've got this independence thing going on. You got your own stuff running. You seem to be having everything on track.
Yeah.
And that made him feel a certain type of way, and he communicated that to you.
Yeah.
But now you aren't communicating back.
No.
When you look back, do you think if you had done a little more communicating with him, it might have helped your situation?
I think it could have helped. But, fundamentally, it was also showing me his true colours. Sometimes you just have to accept that that's who the person is. Like I say, like that whole lack of like exposure and being able to relate to people was kind of the main key driver of why he could not just like behave in an socially acceptable manner.
I know we can't change people.
Yeah.
I know we can't make them do things that they are either oblivious to or unaware of. But could you have pointed them in that direction?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm guilty of that. Like, I take that, like, that's completely my own fault. I just, in relationships, like, normally I just avoid difficult conversations. I just think, okay, so this is how the discussion is likely to pan out. And then I just feel like, oh, God, it's going to be a lot of effort. And then I just check out.
Feels like there's a lot of logic to how you process these sort
of things. Oh my God, yeah. Like,
was he the same in how he processes things?
Well, no, I should be looking at relationship based on logic. Like, I should just, it's about feelings, right? And that's something I'm trying to stop. Like, stop thinking and like the logical way of things. Just go with the feeling. Yeah. But for me, it was just like, I just avoid it.
So who decided that now it's time to quit? Now, like this is it.
So let's think back. So like, I was struggling. I was struggling because I was with him every single day and I just didn't have enough headspace and I just felt like I was about to blow up. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but it actually isn't. Like I just could not cope. I felt like I was going to burst because I just wasn't having enough time to myself. And I was like, oh my God, I just feel, at work you're around people, you come back and you're like around a person and you're just like together constantly. And so I was struggling. So then he was also just not really feeling it. So then he just said, do you think we should call it a day? And I just felt a massive relief. And I was just like, you know what? I think so. Yeah. And like, I just felt relieved.
But within that relief, did you feel a bit of insensitivity from his end? Because you're still grieving the loss of a parent.
Yeah.
And then he's just adding another loss to you. Did you feel like, dude, you're being insensitive here?
No, not at all. Because like my therapist had already warned me. Like this is a known stat. Like people are likely to break up after bereavement or divorce. It can either bring you together or bring you apart. Like it's just one of those things. So for me to have expected him to like just carry on because I'm going through something, I mean, we gave it a year, like it wasn't working. And equally, like sometimes with bereavement, it's one of those things, perhaps, you need to find your own headspace on your own. Yeah. And it's hard to do it in a relationship where you're having to show love and intimacy to somebody when really that's the last thing on your mind.
So I'm guessing intimacy was an issue during that period because you've lost someone.
Yeah, I just felt like, God, dude, like get a grip. But I feel like, even when I was speaking to my friends who, have gone through bereavement, guys just don't get it. Like guys are like machines. It's almost,
turn the machine on, bang.
Yeah. And women don't function that way. Yeah. So for guys, I was speaking to my friend about this and I was like, look, I don't get it. Like, how is he expecting me to like show love when that's the last thing on my mind? Like, I'm just suffering emotionally. Yeah. And she was like, mate, like guys could be at war and they can still just go for it and just move on. Like that's just how they're engineered. Like for them, nothing stops them. It doesn't matter what they're going through. And that's because women were like emotional beings perhaps and men are not so. So like it's pointless. I don't get it.
One of the lessons that you presented was that sometimes you make the guy feel like he's wanted.
Yeah.
Now how much of that did you present to him?
Probably 0. Well, okay, maybe 20%.
20%.
Yeah, so like when we broke up, he was like, look, this is not working out because I feel like I'm not needed. Yeah. I feel like there's no room for me in your life because you just get on with everything and there's just no point. Like I could not be here and it would make a difference.
And by that time, it was too late to try and fix, to say to him, oh, listen, yeah, I do need you to support me with A, B, C, D.
I understand, I have to make people feel needed, but equally, I don't feel like he could fulfill my needs. Yeah. And equally, because he was very reliant on me for like pretty much everything, like socializing, going away or whatever, I just felt like he was expecting so much more from the relationship because we are rounded individuals because, we're happy with our friendships, our work, we've got hobbies, all those kind of things, different interests. With him, it was just like I was the main subject matter for him. And like that was it. And that's just...
It becomes heavy on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Your relationship cannot fulfill you.
It feels like you had a lot of weight on there, the weight from the relationship, the weight from what you were going through in your personal life. So why didn't you pull the plug? But why did it have to be him?
Because, I mean, I'd thought about it lots of times, but I just...
You didn't have the strength to do it?
Possibly. Yeah, I'm not sure why I didn't. To be honest.
So how did it feel when you've thought about doing it so much and then it ends up coming from the other person?
It's just like, fine, we're aligned.
Or you're just like, oh, look, you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah. It was just like, okay, like we're on the same page, so it's fine. Yeah.
Well, if you were to see him now, What would you say to him?
I would wish him well. Yeah, I'll definitely wish him well. I know the errors of my ways. I know that, like, you know, I need to let people in. I need to show my vulnerable side, that kind of stuff. So I need that, but equally it's a two-way thing. Because when I was speaking to one of my guy friends about it, he was like, he was dating someone who was like that, but he was emotionally intelligent to realize that. So then he would have the conversations to try and kind of bring it out of her. You know, it's a two-way thing, right? Because you almost have to create that environment where people feel like they can be vulnerable with you. So like, it was a good life lesson for me to become more self-aware of how I am in relationships, and you know, that perhaps I just need to let my guard down a bit.
So you're ready to date again?
Am I ready to date again? I mean, dating and relationships are different, right? You can go on dates with no intention of it becoming serious.
Okay. Are you ready for a relationship?
I've thought about this, and I'm not sure. I think I need to figure out what it is that I want from a relationship, so then I can better articulate it to that person, and then also just like know how to become more vulnerable. Like, I have started to do it, and I'm getting better at it. So yeah, and just being able to say, you know, if this doesn't meet my needs, like, you know, shelve it, go on to the next thing. Yeah.
They do say there's plenty of fish in the sea, don't they?
Oh, yeah. And I'm a good fish, so there's plenty of fish after me.
Well, for all those who've been listening to this podcast, there's a heap of lessons that were given to us at the beginning. I wish I could list them all from the top of my head. Obviously can't do that, but all very valuable, very important. And one of the key takeaways is that it's okay to be human. It's okay to be vulnerable. And it's also okay to have those difficult conversations, communicate with people, and make sure that you guys are on the same page and you value the same things. You've been listening to Tinto. This is The Feeling Station, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you're feeling. Now that it's over. Let me talk about my feelings. Let me talk about my feelings, yeah. Kujiziro amai. Love is a fire.